I still remember the day I walked into my boss's office, heart pounding with excitement. "We're promoting you," she said with a proud smile. "You'll be leading the new international project. It's a huge step forward for your career." My hand shook. This was everything I had worked for over the past 3 years. Late nights, cancelled weekends, missed birthdays, all for this moment. But as quickly as the joy rushed in, so did the hesitation. The project would require months of travel. I'd be away from home during the final weeks of wedding planning. And Alex, well, he wasn't exactly supportive of my career to begin with. That night, I sat on our couch with the contract in my hands. "I don't know if I should take it," I told him, searching his face for some kind of reassurance. He barely looked up from his phone. "Honestly? With the wedding and everything, it's bad timing," he said, shrugging. "You'll have other opportunities." I smiled weakly, nodded, and the next morning, I declined the promotion. For him. For us. Or at least, that's what I told myself. But soon after, the cracks started showing. Alex became distant. Late nights at work. Sudden weekend meetings. And a new name that started coming up way too often. Emily. "Just a coworker," he'd say with a laugh. "She's part of the team on the new project." The same project I should have been leading. I tried not to overthink it. But every time his phone buzzed late at night. Every time he left the room to take a call. Every time he came home smelling like perfume that wasn't mine. My stomach twisted. I told myself I was being paranoid. That I was just stressed. That I was projecting my career disappointment onto our relationship. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. 2 weeks before the wedding, we had our final meeting with the event coordinator for the rehearsal dinner. While Alex was busy checking his phone, again, I sat there, smiling politely, wondering why I felt so empty. That night, as he slept, I opened his laptop. I wasn't proud of it. But desperation makes you do things you never thought you would. To my surprise, his laptop wasn't password protected. I opened his email. And there it was. An entire folder labeled work trip photos. Click. My heart dropped. Photo after photo. Alex and Emily. Laughing at dinner. Sitting way too close on flights. Her wearing one of his t-shirts. Him kissing her cheek. Her replying with heart emojis. And the worst part? The timestamps. Some of these trips happened while I was home, skipping work events, choosing floral arrangements, making guest lists. While I was giving up my life, for him. I closed the laptop, and sat in silence for almost an hour. Tears streamed down my face, but I wasn't just sad. I was angry. Angrier than I'd ever been in my life. At him. At her. At myself, for sacrificing everything. But this time, I wasn't going to stay quiet. Not anymore. That night, I started making copies. Emails. Photos. Flight confirmations. By the time the sun rose, I had a stack of proof thick enough to fill a binder. And a plan forming in my head. A plan for the rehearsal dinner. By the next morning, I had already made 3 copies of everything. Emails. Flight bookings. Photos from their hotel stays. Text messages he thought he had deleted. I printed everything and organized them into neatly labeled envelopes. One for each table at the rehearsal dinner. It wasn't enough to just confront him privately. I wanted everyone, our friends, our families, even his coworkers, to know exactly who he was. For the first time in weeks, I felt strangely calm. At work that day, I avoided eye contact with everyone. Especially Emily. She walked past my desk like nothing was happening. Laughing on the phone. Flipping her hair. Sending him little glances when she thought no one was watching. But I was watching. And I knew. My boss, Amanda, noticed my mood. "You okay?" she asked, putting a hand on my shoulder. I nodded, forcing a smile. "I will be, after tonight." Amanda paused, then leaned in. "If this has anything to do with what I think it does, just know I've got your back." Her words stayed with me all afternoon. After work, I stopped at a local print shop and had the cover page for each envelope printed in bold letters. The truth about Alex and Emily. I even included dates and times for reference. I wanted it to be impossible for him to deny. That evening, I rehearsed my speech in front of the mirror at least a dozen times. I kept it short. Clear. No drama. No shouting. Just facts. And one final line I couldn't wait to say. "I sacrificed my career for this relationship, and this is how you thanked me." I imagined the silence that would follow. The shock. The gasps. It gave me just enough courage to get through the next few hours. Before heading to the dinner, I packed all the envelopes into a tote bag. I checked my makeup. Put on my favorite lipstick. And slipped into a deep burgundy dress that I knew hugged my curves just right. If I was going down, I was going to do it looking strong. At the restaurant, the atmosphere was festive. Laughter. Clinking glasses. Waiters moving around with trays of appetizers. Alex greeted me with a big smile like nothing was wrong. "You look incredible," he whispered in my ear. I smiled back. A cold, calculated smile. "Thanks. I have something special planned for tonight," I replied. He laughed, totally oblivious. Emily was already there, sitting at the table with his coworkers, wearing a dress that was far too short for the occasion. I could feel her eyes on me. And for the first time, I didn't look away. As guests started to take their seats, I walked discreetly from table to table, placing an envelope at each centerpiece. Some people noticed. "What's this?" one of his cousins asked. I just smiled. "A little something I prepared for everyone," I said, keeping my tone light. When I returned to the front of the room, Amanda caught my eye from across the hall and gave me a subtle nod of encouragement. Alex tapped his glass with a fork to get everyone's attention. "Everyone. Before we eat, my beautiful fiancé has a few words she'd like to share." The room applauded. I stood, walked to the microphone. And with my hands perfectly steady, I began. "First, I want to thank you all for being here tonight." I paused. Looked around the room. And with every ounce of strength I had left, I took a deep breath. And said the words that would change everything. "But before we eat, there's something you all need to know about Alex and Emily." For a split second, no one moved. The room froze. Glasses held midair. Forks halfway to mouths. Smiles turning into confused stares. I could feel Alex's eyes boring into me. And Emily. Her face went pale instantly. But I didn't hesitate. I unfolded the paper from my clutch and started reading. Over the past few months, while I was turning down job offers, sacrificing my career, and planning this wedding, Alex was busy, building a different kind of relationship. gasps echoed through the room. Aunt Maria, sitting near the front, covered her mouth. His best friend Jake whispered, "What the hell," loud enough for half the table to hear. I continued, my voice steady. A relationship with someone in this very room, someone we've all welcomed, trusted, and celebrated alongside us. I looked directly at Emily. Her eyes widened. She shook her head slightly, as if silently begging me to stop. But I kept going. While I was finalizing seating charts and cake flavors, Alex and Emily were booking hotel rooms, sharing late-night calls, and exchanging messages that, honestly, I wish I'd never seen. At that point, some people started opening the envelopes. The sound of paper tearing filled the air. Whispers turned into loud exclamations. "Oh my God! Is this real? Look at these dates." I watched as my aunt flipped through the screenshots. As one of Alex's coworkers scrolled through the printed email threads. As my cousin pointed to a hotel reservation with the exact same weekend Alex had told me he was on a business trip. Alex stood up. "Stop. That's enough," he shouted, trying to grab the microphone from my hands. I stepped back. Amanda, from across the room, stood up too. "Don't you dare touch her," she said loudly, walking toward the front. The guests went dead silent again. All eyes on us. Emily started to cry. She mumbled something about a misunderstanding, but her voice was barely audible over the wave of murmurs and shock spreading through the room. I took one final deep breath. I gave up my dream job for this man. For this life. And this is how he repaid me. I placed the microphone gently on the table. And with every ounce of pride and strength I had left, I turned, grabbed my bag, and walked out of the room. Behind me, I heard a mixture of voices. Some calling my name. Some calling his. Some yelling at Emily. And somewhere in the chaos, a slow, almost sarcastic, applause started. I didn't look back. Not for him. Not for her. Not for anyone. That night was for me. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at my phone, still buzzing with notifications. Missed calls from Alex. Text messages. Voicemails. One said, "Please, let me explain." Another, "You blew everything out of proportion." I didn't even bother opening the rest. I blocked his number. Then, I blocked Emily. And for the first time in weeks, I felt a strange, unfamiliar sense of peace. Later that evening, I checked my social media. People were already talking. Some guests had posted cryptic Instagram stories. When the rehearsal dinner turns into a Netflix drama. Weddings bring out the truth, wow. I laughed bitterly. Part of me felt humiliated, but another part felt victorious. I'd stood up for myself. I'd exposed the lies. And I didn't let anyone silence me. I picked up the envelope I'd saved for myself, the one with all the evidence. For a brief second, I wondered if I should go through it one last time, but then I ripped it in half and threw it in the trash. The next morning, my best friend Mia showed up at my door with coffee and donuts. Without saying a word, she hugged me tight. "You did what every woman wishes she could do in that situation," she said, handing me a caramel latte. I smiled for the first time in days. We sat in my living room, talking for hours. She reminded me of the things I'd given up for Alex. The opportunities one had let go. And how now I had the chance to reclaim my life. And that's exactly what I intended to do. That afternoon, I called Amanda. "Is that promotion still available?" I asked, heart racing. There was a pause, then her warm voice replied. "It's yours, if you want it." I almost cried again, but this time, from relief. "I'll start Monday," I said, feeling stronger with every word. Over the next few days, I focused on me. I signed up for a gym membership. Started meal prepping like I'd always wanted. And, for the first time in months, I opened that travel app on my phone and booked a solo weekend getaway. Some guests from the dinner sent me supportive messages. Even people I barely knew. One coworker wrote, "You taught us all a lesson about self-respect." Another guest said, "That was the most honest speech I've ever witnessed." Of course, there were whispers. Some people said I was dramatic. That I had embarrassed Alex and Emily unnecessarily. But I didn't care. They weren't the ones who had given up their dreams for someone who didn't deserve them. One night, as I sat by my window, I opened my journal. I wrote one sentence in big, bold letters. "This is the first chapter of my story." And for the first time, that felt true. A week later, I stood in front of the mirror, buttoning up my blazer. The same office where I had almost said goodbye to my career now felt like the place where I was rebuilding my life. Amanda greeted me at the door with a proud smile. "Ready for your first leadership meeting?" "More than ready," I replied. As I walked into the conference room, I felt something shift inside me. That heavy cloud, the weight of disappointment and betrayal. It wasn't gone, but it felt lighter. I had made it through. And I wasn't just surviving. I was moving forward. Later that day, I received a message from an unknown number. I hesitated, then opened it. It was from Emily. "I hope you're happy. You ruined both our lives." I stared at the screen for a second. Then laughed. For the first time, genuinely laughed. Without replying, I blocked her too. That night, I posted a photo on Instagram. A close-up of my hand, no engagement ring, holding a coffee cup. With a caption that simply said, "Sometimes, losing them is the best thing that can happen to you." The comments came flooding in. Friends, coworkers, even acquaintances I hadn't spoken to in years. "Proud of you. You're stronger than you think." Legendary move at the dinner. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like the woman who had been left behind. I felt like the woman who took control. A few nights later, Mia and I went out for drinks. As we laughed over cocktails, she raised her glass. "To new beginnings," she said. "To never ignoring red flags again," I added, clinking my glass with hers. We laughed, genuinely this time. When I got home that night, I stood by my bedroom window, looking out at the city lights. And for the first time, I didn't replay the mistakes. I didn't mourn the loss. I smiled, thinking of all the things waiting for me now. The trips I'd put off. The career goals I'd buried. The peace I finally felt. I grabbed my journal and wrote one final line for the night. "They thought they broke me, but this is just the beginning." And with that, I closed the book. And fell asleep. More free than I'd felt in years. Have you ever given up something important for love, only to find out you were being betrayed? Tell me your story in the comments. And let me know, what would you have done in my place? If you think I did the right thing by exposing the truth, hit like, share this video, And don't forget to subscribe for more real stories like this one.